Hey Tankers, and welcome back to World of Tanks with PR154. Today featuring a game in the premium tier 8 German medium tank KampfPanzer 7RH. Now this is a vehicle with rather high mobility, good DPM, and that's DPM that's delivered with precision thanks to a lightning fast aim time and minimal dynamic dispersion. But these gunnery characteristics do come as a cost. The alpha damage delivered is quite low at 200 hit points, so quite low for a 90mm gun by comparison. General armor layout is also not fantastic, but can be a little bit bouncy in the right situation. Of course, you do have to treat the turret as a weak spot universally, but you get 75mm of armored protection on the side, so you can kind of reverse side scrape effectively, and you get 115mm on the upper and lower frontal plates, which you can probably utilize in a poke, provided again that the turret is not exposed. I guess the idea there being you drive forward, you might be able to bait a shot and then use your ability to surge forward and maybe pummel them with 2 or 3 shots in return. Still a risky strategy nonetheless, and maybe not consistent with its role specialisation as a sniping medium tank. Now this fight doesn't exactly get off to the best start for us because our light tank ends up being spotted, smacked by artillery and sent back to the garage. Additionally, I'm also the only tank that's gone into that A1 position, which I think for any side, A1 has got to be probably the most important position on this map. So I'm kind of there on my own at the moment, while the rest of the team is kind of patiently waiting for me to spot something, or they're otherwise pushing the city. Now the enemy team has a bit of a luxurious position here because they've actually got 2 light tanks between the LTTB and the Batchassion 12T, and LTTB has decided it's going to start pressing the centre. Now it's run into a couple of tank destroyers fairly early on, and that's attracted our gun sight as well, which has resulted in a bit of a tracking shot. We've made a connection and it's still holding there, so we're going to keep firing and keep firing, and we're looking for those puffs of dirt that indicate a miss, but we're not quite seeing it yet, so we'll just keep sending these shells down range and hopefully we might get something out of it. Now full disclosure, I am sending high explosive down range because I did have a critical hits personal campaign mission that I was trying to collect, and it did end up with a desired effect, at least on that LTTB for this battle. But spoiler alert, the mission did not happen to come my way this time. Now at this point in time, there's really not too much point following my vehicle because it's just kind of stuck at A1 and not really too sure what to do. So we're going to have a look at what's happening in the city. Now fortunately, TNT 1186 here in the Tiger 2 did able to bring us a fantastic series of events of what was happening in the city. Now they've started off being faced down by this AMX 65T. They've ended up being outflanked by the M3Y. So they're caught a lower hit point position and stuck in a shootout with these enemy heavy tanks, unfortunately, consistently taking a few penetrating hits. Now they have been supported by IS-3A, but unfortunately a little bit too late as TNT ends up going back to the garage, but IS-3A getting the drop on M3Y and putting a few rather nasty holes into the tier 8 American heavy tank. Now of course IS-3A is pretty much like an ordinary IS-3, except it has worse gun handling, but it has an auto loader. But even once it gets to the bottom of that auto reloader, well, it still fires just as quickly as an IS-3A and this M3Y, certainly discovering that the hard way. Now you can just get a sense now of how unusual the city fight push is, in that we had the likes of TNT and the Tiger 2 that were quite well embedded in the city. In the meantime, we still have vehicles that are strung out back towards the rail bridge, like the T-32 and the Jagdpanzer 105. Now they're engaging this Object 7032-122 and T-26E5, and they're also accompanying by this VK100-01P that's looking to be getting in behind it. Object 703 certainly giving our team both barrels, shutting down the Jagdpanzer, but the VK100-01P now firmly in behind, and it's planting shots into the 703-122. Now it's got the 128mm main gun, so both of these enemy heavy tanks are one-shottable for the VK100-01P as the Object 703-122 goes down. It does have a longer reload though, but fortunately the IS-3A is in between. It manages to get it down to 9 hit points, with T-32 offering the finishing move. Just as that's all done and dusted, Tiger 2 enters the fray and puts a shot into the side of VK100-01P, which they return in fairly short order. IS-3A, we can see, is going for the flanking maneuver behind the back, really playing less of a breakthrough tank role and more of a support tank role, but playing to that role rather brilliantly, although it is Artie ultimately that provides the final nail in the coffin for VK101P. Turning to the southern end of the city now, we see the enemy AMX-65T has been boxed in by the Tiger II and the Carnarvon. Very awkward position to be in because you can only ever point your gun in one direction at once. The Tiger I has poked and has put a nice meaty hit in the 65T, possibly a little bit flustered with that shot as it doesn't look like they penetrated the Tiger II, and it's Tiger II that just ends up following up with the finishing move. So there's only one enemy heavy tank left in the city, that's the Tiger II, and it's in a really terrible position here because it's getting caught from those elements that were in the north end of the city. It's being caught by those elements that were in the south of the city, but it's ultimately gone down to the T-28 prototype. Now, there are 6 tank destroyers aside, and so we have to assume the enemy has set up a rather formidable gun line on the other side, and that sees the demise of our friendly T-32 as well. So with the story of Highway City being somewhat fleshed out, we'll return to our little adventures in the A1 line, and we're finally joined by a friend in the ShipTech TVP, that's the premium Tier 8 Czech tank destroyer, and we start to make our move, I guess, conscious that those enemy tank destroyers aren't going to spot themselves for us. Now, the fact that I have a tank destroyer in my behind makes all the difference in the world. I couldn't, in all good conscience, push this line without something behind me, like something to deliver shots into whatever it is that I'd spotted. Now, granted, there's artillery on station and they've been able to follow up to the Scorpion G. They were paying attention, they could see what we were doing. Unfortunately, ShipTech couldn't quite draw a bead this time around and they have moved up to C1 in support. Now, while we haven't optimized this crew or its equipment loadout for concealment, we have been getting counter-spotted by something. Now, I wasn't quite sure if that was the Scorpion G that was involved, but at the moment we seem to be capable of lighting it up and not taking damage, so I'm quite happy to just keep doing a few cartwheels out here in order to make that happen. Now, there's another enemy tank destroyer that has joined the party, specifically the T-28 prototype there, so now that's 2 enemy tank destroyers that our eyeballs are starting to lock down. Now, we thought we could, based on knowing where those tank destroyers roughly were, that we might be able to continue to work this ridge and just keep a minimal exposure. But there's also a ShipTech TVP out there as well, so they've put a penetrating shot through our turret. We have been able to spot them as they fired there, so they're quite likely well bushed up and we'll have to find another way around. Now, one of my favourite things to do in this situation is to try to take the low approach, go under the bridge and then try to come up through that gully along the G line, and that often allows you to, if not optically spot, then at least proximity spot enemy vehicles. I've got the ShipTech with me, so there's no reason why that can't work, particularly if they hold in that position. I do want to take a rather long line, however, because I was getting spotted by enemy vehicles without getting much spot in return. But in doing this transit, we end up finding the enemy bat chassis on 12T, and ShipTech starts putting fire into it. We start putting fire into it as well, again with the high explosive shells, for the sole reason that I had a personal campaign mission that was predicated on causing a minimum amount of damage while also causing damage to enemy internal modules or crew members. So otherwise, I probably would have used AP in that situation every other time. We've managed to get a spot on the enemy Ferdinand, no follow-up fire, but we'll just keep working this bush. Now, as it happens, our team has been able to work their way along that opposite ridge, and AT-15 has been able to put the killing shot there into Ferdinand. And that's going to become a pretty common tale. Granted, we've wound the clock back a couple of minutes to sort of revisit this flank after the heavies had taken the city, but now that they're all spread out along the upper plateau on the other side of the river, now as we push forward to engage these enemy tank destroyers and getting spots on these enemy targets, well, now I can get supporting fires from the bulk of the team. The trick, of course, is finding them in the first place. We're still getting spotted without being able to get eyeballs back on those enemy vehicles. I was disinclined to poke that, but as it turns out, we found the enemy T-28 prototype, and we weren't in a particularly favourable location there, so we've tried to duck away. Now, it's been taking some fire. We've been able to find that enemy ShipTech that we couldn't quite dig out before. As suspected, it was quite heavily heavily bushed up, but now we've got eyes on it. Now it's facing crossfire, and T-28 prototype ends up knocking it out from the other side. At this point in time, we've done a bit of a shell change. Obviously, the high explosive shells weren't doing quite what was intended in terms of damage on enemy vehicles. We just weren't getting the critical hits required to progress the other mission. So we have switched back to the AP and starting to have effect on target with the ISU 152K, with final effect being brought by the T-28 prototype. Our ship tech has also pushed in. They've lit up the enemy T-28 prototype. Now, I'm hoping at this point in time that the enemy tank destroyer is distracted by my colleague, and we managed to get a side shot into that, sending it back to the garage. Only 3 enemy vehicles remaining, scores 12-6. So we're going to stay on the hunt and see what we can dig out. Across the board, our team is now advancing out of the city, across the lowlands, and they're actually being able to spot their own targets. That Scorpion up there was not spotted by myself. That was obviously one of the many vehicles that are advancing on their position. We tried to draw a bead on it, but ultimately it's the Carnarvon that ends up taking that particular kill. We'll still push forward because it looks like we've got a flanking opportunity on the enemy Stridsvagn S1. Now it's drawing off the ridge, not quite quickly enough. We managed to get a shot into its side. Again, we've gone back to the high explosive shells. We're still hanging on to that possibility of mission completion and critical hits, but unfortunately that doesn't come off, and it goes down to the Tiger 2. We line up on the SPG with the high explosive still loaded, 1 shot and 2 shot, and kill it on the blind. So that was the last and final of the enemy team there. Again, we didn't quite get there with the personal campaign mission, but we did manage quite a pleasing result. So let's check that out. So for our efforts there, folks, that was an Ace Mastery badge. It did place us in the top 1% of experience earners in the premium tier 8 German medium tank KampfPanzer 7 RH for that week. We didn't have the usual sort of Top Gun or high caliber that might accompany a high DPM tank like this, but what we did come away with instead was the Patrol Duty Epic Medal, which is awarded to players who help the team damage at least 6 enemy vehicles by highlighting them. The key being those tanks damaged must be damaged as a direct result of just yourself spotting them. We picked up a couple of other badges of merit here. Spotter for spotting enemy vehicles, obviously, as we did, enabling at least 1,000 hit points of assist damage to be inflicted. We picked up the Bruiser Medal for damaging enemy vehicle modules or injuring crew members at least 5 times in the course of the battle, and we actually ended up coming away with 8 critical hits to enemy vehicles. Unfortunately, it was just not sufficient to satisfy the results of that particular personal campaign mission I was going for. We picked up the Fighter Medal for destroying at least 4 or 5 enemy vehicles in that battle, hit the lower limit of that at 4 enemy vehicles destroyed, and of course the Fire for Effect Medal for doing at least a hit points in damage, with nearly 3,300 hit points of damage inflicted. Having a look to the team scores, we did place top by experience by a significant margin, about 50% over the next taker. Of course, we had the IS-3A, VK-100-01 and Ferdinand being our follow-ups on our team, making a significant contribution in the course of that push into the city. Having a look to the enemy team, was actually M4043 that had the stellar game there. Nearly 2,000 hit points of damage inflicted on our team, and 1 kill, which rather memorably was the VK-100-01P. The enemy T-26E5 and M3Ys, who were both attempting to defend the northern area of the city, coming in 2nd or 3rd, but not carrying quite hard enough today. Having a look to the detailed report, an exceedingly profitable game for us there. We've come away with a net of over 105,000 credits. We didn't really dive into the premium ammunition there. We didn't have any consumables requiring replacement, and we survived the battle, so your repair costs were kept to a bit of a minimum. So happy days there in KampfPanzer 7 RH. Maybe less use of the gun, more use of the eyeballs here, with nearly 3,900 hit points of damage inflicted. Quite happy with that. Now, of course, these replays features are not just all about me. On our Twitch channel, we are taking community submissions, and if you're around, we'd love to get you in channel to have a chat about what was going through your mind and down your barrel. And you've probably seen a few more videos to this effect on our YouTube channel lately, and we hope for many more to come. So if you'd like to submit your replay, then please check out the Discord link in the description below. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, happy tanking and take care out there.